Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Brittany and this is Faith in Business with Britt. If you are new here, welcome. And if you are returning, welcome back. I am a CEO, founder, and creator of my nonprofit called Project Lighthouse. And in today's video, we will be discussing the complexity of grief and how to navigate that journey. If you are someone that has lost someone recently or maybe in the last couple of years, or maybe even years ago, and you are struggling with grief and struggling with how to navigate it, I am going to share my story from what happened when my dad passed away when I was 15 years old and how that experience shaped the rest of my life, from teenage years to my 20s and now in my 30s. And also today is his birthday. So I would like to honor him in this way while also sharing my story. And I pray that it helps you in any way of what you are experiencing, if that is something that you are currently going through right now. So let's just jump right into it. So when I was 11 years old, my dad was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer. He had tumors that had attached to his colon, and he wasn't able to get surgery to remove those tumors because he would have pretty much bled out. So what they did instead, they had put him on chemotherapy and on radiation. They wanted to try and shrink the tumors. And at one point, it was working. I will say around when I turned 13, he had got good news and said that the medicines were working and he was actually cleared to go back to work. In that moment of when I was 11 and we had got that news, my mom had let us know, me and my two brothers let us know that he wouldn't be able to work and she would be working more to try and help with the cost and, just everything that was in her responsibilities. And so from 11 to 13, so this was about 2004 to 2006, my dad was going through chemo and radiation, and it had ended up helping him and working out, so he was able to go back to work. But my mom was a little hesitant with him going back to work. She thought it was going to put too much stress on his body and his tumors may come back. Oftentimes when cancer goes into remission, it sometimes just finds another part of the body to attach itself to, and it often comes back more aggressively. And in this case, that is what happened around 2007. It had came back and it was more aggressive, and they just let us know that his tumors were actually bigger than the last time. And so from that point on, there was no possibility or way that he could work doing what he did. And so that put a lot of more, I feel like, stress on my mom at that time. And with me and my brothers being younger, I think it just changed how we did our day-to-day routines and how we were operating as a family at that moment. It put a lot of stress, and I think in the household it just kind of shifted the energy and shifted like how we operated throughout the days and throughout the weeks. We had to now pretty much become caretakers to help my dad throughout the days of when he couldn't get up or when he couldn't walk or couldn't make himself something to eat. And so I endured that time period with him. And when I look back at it, I'm very grateful for that time, because that was when me and him spent the most time together. When I would get home from school, I would make him something to eat, and then we'll just watch a movie or his favorite TV show and just kind of relax. And in those times, my dad would often, like, I would say, give me some nuggets of life, and he would try to like give me, like, I guess, all the information that he felt that I can get in that time that I would understand, because I think he knew that his situation was getting worse. The cancer wasn't getting any better, and it just started to take over from like not only his colon but through his organs and eventually to his brain. And in his last days, we spent a lot of time when I came home from school And at 15, in 2008, actually, 2 days before I turned 2 days before I turned 15, my dad had passed away. And the weeks leading up to that, I knew he wasn't feeling his best, but he was always good at kind of covering up like the pain that he was enduring during that time. And we had one last trip to the hospital, and pretty much the doctor said we just needed to make him comfortable and put him in hospice care. And shortly after, he had passed away. And that was the beginning of my sophomore year and the beginning of my brother's senior year. So at that time, we had about 2 or 3 weeks off. But it was just something that happened during that time that really kind of just shifted in my mind, like, okay, like I'm still a teenager, these are still like my kid years, and my whole life is changing. Like, I didn't understand grief, I didn't understand the sadness that I was experiencing, I didn't understand depression. I was feeling very empty, which I now know was a void that I was feeling because my parent had passed away. And I realized that what I was experiencing was something that was normal, but since I had was so young and I never had went through that, um, it was a hard journey for me. Like from 15 through 18, basically like the rest of my high school years, it was not a typical like high school experience because I was extremely sad all the time. I really didn't want to go to school. I had asked my mom if I could get homeschooled. I had started failing my classes sophomore year because I just wasn't mentally present. I was physically there, but I wasn't mentally present, and it was causing an effect in my schoolwork. And at one point, I didn't even know if I was going to graduate because I just couldn't get out of bed. Like, I would get up some mornings and my mom would be like, "You want to go?" And I'd be like, "Nope." And I would lay down in bed. My brother, however, he was like, "This is my senior year. Like, I'm graduating high school." So he would get up and go. But I couldn't do it and like be around like like all my friends or classmates and things like that. And some days I just didn't feel it. And at that time, my mom decided not to put us in counseling, which we had talks about later on in life, where I felt like, had my mom put us in counseling and allow for me to be homeschooled for that rest of sophomore year, I think I could have managed it a little bit better. Um, it was a very complex journey. Grief is just not anything that someone can tell you like this is how it's going to be. It's just what you experience, it's what you go through. And every day is a new challenge, every day is a new wave of emotion. Some days you're going to just have random moments where you just start crying. And some days you're going to have moments where you just think of the good times. And when I was younger, I couldn't understand why my emotions and everything was just so up and down. Also, at that time, we were heavily in church and we had a church home. And I think my mom just kind of took that as the way that we were going to heal through it and we were going to get through it. And I appreciated that. I just wanted more of a concrete way of like dealing with the everyday emotions, which I think counseling at that time would have helped because I think it shaped everything that we were going to go through within those next maybe like 5 to 6 years, that just no one knew how to handle their grief and how to handle a very hard situation. Like, our dad was gone, and financially my mom had struggled, and it was just a lot on her shoulders. And I think that trickled down to us as the kids, and we just learned to just not speak about how we felt, and we learned to just kind of go through the motions. And if anybody was feeling sad or wanted to cry, I think everyone just held that in because I think everyone was trying just to be strong. But in reality, when I look back at it, it was a very bad place that we were in mentally because no one was speaking about it. No one was talking about how they felt, and we weren't in any counseling. And so I think from 15, I remember laying in bed some mornings, and I just remember like I would lay in bed and I could just feel like if you don't get up, you're not going to graduate. Like, even at that young age, I was very like, I got to pull through this, I got to get through this. But it's a very just different type of journey because you have the 5 stages of grief. And from what I had learned when I had gotten older, is that I had never moved past the depression stage. And that depression turns into clinical depression. And when you start drinking and, mixing anything of that nature and being in that type of element, it makes it worse. And at that particular time, I didn't understand what like clinical depression was or what depression was in general. In 2008, a lot of mental health conversations were not being talked about. Therapy was not big. Like a big discussion, and so you just kind of dealt with your situations how they came. And especially like in my household, it was taught like what goes in this house, what goes on in this house stays in this house. And so that's just kind of how I dealt with my emotions and dealt with my grief. I just held it all in until I had gotten older and I started to go out and I started to drink, and I realized all that just came rushing out. But it was because I never moved past the depression stage. And since I never moved past that, I was in a very dark space when I was like 20. I was in a very dark space when I was about like 20, 21, 22, and just started experiencing a lot of just adult things that of course were going to come, but I just felt like I wasn't prepared for it. I felt like life hit me at such a young age and I didn't know how to really deal with it. Like, I'm in high school, I'm a sophomore. One year, my dad is here, and next year my dad is passed away, and it just was confusing. It was hard to navigate being a teenager going through that, and then from sophomore year to junior year to senior year, and then like boom, now it's adulthood, and now I need to go out and find a job and do this and really grow up. And that's the time where I felt really lost because I normally would. My mom was, of course, very present and helpful. And also, my dad was very instrumental in my life before he passed away. So there were just some things I would go through that I'd be like, oh man, like I wish my dad was here. Like I have so many questions. And, and then all these thoughts run through my head. Like, he wasn't going to be there when I went to prom. He wasn't going to be there when I got my first job or when I bought my first car, or, the day I decide to have, or the day that I become a parent, or the day that I get married. He's not going to be here to walk me down the aisle. And so all those thoughts, like when I was younger, just ran through my head. But I also realized like how much pain he was going through, like in his body, and he just couldn't hold on or fight that anymore. And I understood it in that way. It just, it sucked. It was just like, go from having both my parents to having one parent, and a lot of that stress went on to my mom. And and it's something that I'm still dealing with to this very day, of like managing my grief. But I will say that in my early days of trying to navigate that grief, I was not doing things that were healthy either. I was drinking a lot, I was eating a lot of junk food, I was just sleeping all day. And be like a vampire, like literally like blacked out curtains, like not getting up for hours, sleeping, not really moving my body, exercising my body, and then being overworked in the particular jobs that I had when I had gotten older. So it was just a moment of time where I realized that grief is something that I'm always going to go through. I'm always going to feel. No one can tell me what my journey would look like with grief, but it's something that I've learned to understand more as I've gotten older. And I'm able to deal with like Father's Day and his birthday and the day of his passing. But for a long time, I couldn't separate my birthday and the day of his passing because it's literally in the same week. And that was also another thing that I had to learn how to navigate through. And I'm still learning that now, because those weeks leading up to my birthday, a lot of memories come up. his last, like what he said, his last words of what he said to me, things like that come up. And it's just, when I was younger, I'll be like, it's just so hard to celebrate a birthday and acknowledge the day that he passed away with it being so close. So I dealt with that. So I had a struggle with that for years and years. And now I just kind of put it all together and I acknowledge that he is always going to be a part of my birthday week. And that's just kind of how I move forward through it. And I just navigate it the best way I can. But experiencing the loss of a parent so young was very, very challenging, and it impacted my adulthood in a way that I really didn't know it was going to or realize that it was going to. And now, as I'm getting older, I'm able to navigate it differently. Yes, I still have days where I'm sad or where I just really miss him and where I just wish that I could pick up the phone and call him. But it has made me stronger as a person. And I know that if he was here now, he would be extremely proud of, what I've accomplished and the woman that I have grown into. And I just, I wanted to get on here and share my story with dealing with grief at such a young age, and not only losing someone, but losing my parent. Something that I know, will happen, but at such a young age, not being able to understand fully like what cancer does to your body. And even the chemos and the radiations being so harsh at that time in 2004. Like overall, his health just was declining. But, I'm grateful for the 15 years I got with him on earth. And that is what keeps me going, and that is what keeps me moving through my grief. And on days where I feel down, I've learned to rest, because the moment where you try to block out your feelings and the moment where you try to pretend like this isn't happening is the moment where the grief kind of gets worse. And so I've learned to just rest when my body tells me to rest, or if I feel overwhelmed with my emotions, I rest, because that's the only way I can recharge and reset my batteries. So I hope that, what you are going through, if you are experiencing a loss in this very moment, or if it's still recent, not even years ago like mine, and you're still trying to navigate it, I will say definitely get counseling. Definitely stay away from things that can cause for the depression to get worse. And definitely just find your center, find your peace, and, keep praying. And the hard times won't last always, but just know that that person is near and dear and closer to you than you think. And I pray that this video has blessed you and encouraged you. And if you haven't already, please subscribe, please share with someone, like and comment, and I will see you guys in the next video. Take care.